Welcome to Sleepy Travel Tailies, where every night we take a slow and soothing journey to some of the most peaceful places in the world. Tonight, we'll drift into the quiet heart of New Orleans, a city known for its music, its soul, and the gentle rhythm of life after dark. The rain has just begun to fall, softly tapping against the old iron balconies, while street lamps cast golden pools of light across the glistening cobblestones dot in the distance. You might hear the faint echo of a saxophone, a tune fading into the warm night air. So, take a deep breath, let your body settle into stillness, and allow the sound of this story to carry you through the rain-soaked streets of a city that never truly sleeps, but always dreams. This is a quiet night in New Orleans. It was early evening when I stepped out into the slow hum of New Orleans. The air was thick with the scent of rain that had passed not long ago, leaving the streets glistening like dark mirrors beneath the soft amber glow of the lamps. I stood there for a moment, taking it in, the kind of stillness that feels alive when every sound carries a story. The French Quarter seemed to breathe in rhythm, a deep, unhurried pulse that echoed from the old balconies, through the winding lanes, and out toward the river. Somewhere, far off, I heard the faint sound of a saxophone. One slow, wandering melody floated across the damp night air. I had arrived just as twilight folded into night, that tender moment when the world exhales and the day finally lets go. The sky above was still streaked with pale pink and violet, fading into a dusky blue. The buildings, painted in soft yellows and faded greens, seemed to hold on to the last of the daylight, like gentle memories. I walked slowly down the narrow street, my footsteps echoing softly against the cobblestones. Each window I passed flickered with warm light. Cafes, art shops, and quiet homes that had seen generations drift by. The sweet scent of bayonets and roasted coffee slipped out from a corner cafe, mingling with the cool, metallic fragrance of rain. I paused beneath a wrought iron balcony draped in ferns, the leaves dripping from the last of the storm. Somewhere above me, wind chimes clinked softly, carried by a warm southern breeze. There was something about this city, something eternal. New Orleans didn't hurry. It never had. It simply moved with its own rhythm, steady and soulful, like the heartbeat of a song that never ends. I crossed toward Jackson Square, where puddles shimmered like little pools of gloss, reflecting the golden lamps and the towering silhouette of St. Louis Cathedral. The air buzzed faintly with life, distant laughter, the soft hum of a streetcar bell, the faint ripple of water from the river beyond. I sat for a while on an old wooden bench near the cathedral. Around me, the city's music seemed to blend with the sound of the night, the low murmur of voices, the whisper of footsteps, and somewhere, always, that quiet note of jazz threading through the air. A street musician stood under a flickering lamppost, his saxophone tilted toward the clouds. The melody he played was slow, not sad, but full of a kind of longing that you can feel deep in your chest. He wasn't playing for anyone in particular. It was simply part of the night, like the rain or the moon, or the scent of magnolia drifting down the street. And as I listened, I felt something shift, a quiet sense of calm that reached deep into me. The city seemed to invite me to rest, to breathe slower, to be still. I tilted my head back, watching as clouds drifted lazily across the half-lit moon. The night was warm, but the air had a cool softness to it, a balance that felt comforting, like slipping beneath a blanket that's been warmed by sunlight. I took a deep breath, letting it all sink in. The rhythm, the scent, the quiet. Tonight, I wasn't just in New Orleans. I was part of it. Somewhere nearby, a door creaked open, and the faint sound of a piano spilled out into the street, soft and unhurried, a lazy tune that wove itself through the saxophone's echo. It was as if the city was composing its own lullaby, slow, melodic, timeless. I closed my eyes for a moment and simply listened. The music, the hum of the lamps, the whisper of rain on the rooftops. It all came together like a dream, gentle and whole. And there, sitting beneath the quiet glow of the cathedral, I felt the night begin to unfold. The night deepened slowly, as if the city itself were drawing a long, contented breath. I rose from the bench and began to wander, letting my footsteps choose their own direction. The streets of the French Quarter curved and branched like a river, quiet alleys spilling into open courtyards, one mood melting into another. The sound of the saxophone drifted behind me, replaced now by the soft hum of voices from a nearby restaurant. The door stood open, its warm light spilling onto the street like honey. Inside, a few diners spoke in gentle tones. Their laughter carried on the scent of gumbo and roasted peppers. The music of cutlery and the faint clinking of glasses blended into the melody of the night. As I passed, a small gust of wind stirred the beads hanging in the doorway. They rattled lightly, like soft bells, before settling again. The cobblestones beneath my shoes were slick, reflecting the lights from every window. I found myself watching my own reflection, distorted and shimmering as I walked. One figure among many ghosts of the past that seemed to move beside me. New Orleans has a way of holding its history close. You can feel it in the walls, layers of laughter, stories, and love that have never quite left. Even the air carries memory here. I turned down a narrow lane framed by iron balconies, where vines climbed lazily up the posts. Somewhere above, someone was playing a slow tune on a trumpet, soft and distant, like a conversation between the stars. Every few steps, I'd catch a new scent. Roasted coffee, wet brick, sweet magnolia, tobacco from a man smoking near a doorway. These simple things, so ordinary, felt heightened here, more alive somehow. I came to a courtyard tucked between two buildings. It was small and hidden, as though the city had built it for those who wanted to disappear for a while. A single lantern burned beside a trickling fountain. Its flame swayed gently, reflected in the pool below. I sat on the stone edge and let my hand rest against the cool marble. The water made a soft rhythm, steady and patient. The sound was hypnotic, like the ticking of a clock that had forgotten time. Somewhere faintly, the city still murmured. Footsteps, laughter, the low roll of a car on distant streets. But here, in this little courtyard, time felt slow and kind. The lantern flickered, and I watched its light paint shifting shadows on the walls. In that golden glow, it was easy to imagine another version of the city, one that existed half in dreams. Perhaps the same streets, the same sounds, but seen through the soft veil of memory. I wondered how many travelers had wandered here before me. Tired souls looking for quiet, artists chasing music, dreamers chasing the hush between songs. Maybe they too had paused in places like this, listening to the heartbeat of New Orleans at night. A faint rumble of thunder rolled in the distance, followed by a whisper of rain brushing against the leaves. The lantern shimmered. I lifted my head, feeling the mist touch my face. It wasn't cold, just cool enough to remind me I was alive, awake here. The rain grew steadier, so I stood and began to walk again. The drops pattered softly against rooftops, sliding down the gutters and into the streets. The city shone, golden reflections trembling on every surface. I passed a narrow passage where candles burned along the wall, leading to a small jazz bar tucked between brick arches. I could hear a band inside, the faint thrum of a bass, the quiet shimmer of cymbals, and then a voice, smooth and gentle, singing about love that comes and goes like the tide. I stood in the doorway, listening. The music was slow, the kind that settles into your chest and stays there. People swayed lightly in their seats, eyes closed, drinks half finished. The glow from the stage lights turned everything amber and soft. I didn't need to go in. The sound was enough. I leaned against the doorway, feeling the rain cool on my shoulders, while the warmth of the bar spilled out toward me. For a few minutes, I let myself drift, caught between two worlds. The quiet street behind me, the golden jazz before me, the rhythm of rain above, the rhythm of music below. When the song ended, the room fell into a momentary hush. Even outside, I could feel it, the silence that follows beauty when words feel too small. The singer spoke softly into the microphone, her voice tender. Good nights never really end in this city. They just fade into the next melody. Then came applause, low and warm, and I smiled to myself, walking on. Down the next street, the lamps grew sparser. The air was cooler now, touched by river mist. My steps slowed naturally, the way one's breath slows before sleep. Somewhere, a cat leapt across a windowsill. A door creaked. The world around me felt suspended in that half-dreaming space where sound becomes softer and light turns liquid. The night of New Orleans had wrapped itself around me completely. Its sounds, its smells, its tender pulse. I could feel it humming inside my chest. And as I moved toward the riverfront, I knew I was walking deeper, not just into the city, but into its soul. The rain had grown heavier now. A steady silver curtain fell across the French Quarter, softening every edge, the buildings, the lights, even the sound of my own footsteps. Each drop struck the cobblestone with a tiny hiss, blending into the music that never seemed to stop here. I followed the faint echo of horns until it led me to the edge of the quarter, where the streets opened wide toward the river. There, between two tall brick warehouses, I found a little cafe glowing like a lantern in the dark. Its windows were fogged from the warmth inside. A wooden sign above the door read, "Le Coeur du Fleuve," the heart of the river. I smiled at the name. It felt right. When I stepped in, the bell above the door chimed softly, a delicate note that dissolved into the sound of jazz. The room was small, filled with round tables and soft amber light. Candles flickered on every surface, their reflections dancing in the dark windows. A few people sat scattered around, some alone, some in pairs, all quiet, listening. On the small stage, 3 musicians played. A pianist with closed eyes, fingers moving like water. A double bassist swaying slowly, his shadow stretching across the wall. And a saxophonist, old and calm, whose music felt like a story told without words. I found a corner table near the window and ordered a cup of chicory coffee. The smell was deep and comforting, earthy, slightly bitter, touched with sweetness. Outside, rain streaked down the glass. Inside, the saxophone sang. For a while, I didn't think. I simply existed between the rhythm of rain and melody, between candlelight and the whisper of steam rising from my cup. The tune was slow and mournful, yet gentle, the kind of sadness that doesn't ache but heals. It filled the room like perfume, wrapping everyone in quiet reverie. The pianist's hands slowed. The notes lingered longer now, suspended in the warm air. Then came silence, a silence so full that it felt alive. The saxophonist looked up, met our eyes, and smiled faintly. He began to speak, his voice low, worn by years, but smooth as velvet. "This tune," he said, "was written by a man who used to play right here, by that very window." He said it came to him one night while he watched the rain fall into the river. He called it the soul of the city. He paused, glancing toward the window where the rain traced slow lines down the glass. "Some say he's still around," he added softly, "whenever the river mist rolls in and the lights turn gold." A quiet murmur of laughter moved through the room. Then he lifted the saxophone again and played. The new melody began with just a few low, trembling notes. It felt like the first words of a story, cautious, curious, and full of memory. Then it rose gently, carrying the listener through unseen streets, past shuttered doors and moonlit balconies. As the music flowed, I closed my eyes. I could almost see the river, dark and wide, reflecting the city's lights like drifting stars. I imagined the old musician by that same window years ago, watching the same rain, dreaming of the same song. Outside, the thunder rolled softly in the distance. Inside, the candles flickered in rhythm with the music. Everything blended, rain, melody, breath, light, until it was impossible to tell where one ended and the other began. It was as if the whole city was breathing through that saxophone. After a time, I couldn't tell how long. The song began to fade, growing slower, softer, until the final note hung in the air like mist. No one clapped immediately. We just sat there, suspended in stillness, as if afraid to break the spell. Then, slowly, the room exhaled. The pianist smiled. The bassist bowed his head. The saxophonist lowered his horn and looked at the rain outside. "That," he said quietly, "is New Orleans. She's not a place, she's a feeling." He set his saxophone down beside him, took a sip of his drink, and leaned back. For a long while, no one spoke. The rain, still falling gently, filled the silence with its tender rhythm. I watched the water beat and run down the window, tracing small rivers of its own. Each drop caught the candlelight and shimmered before disappearing. It struck me then how much this city felt alive, not loud or busy, but aware, as though it had a pulse, a memory, a voice made of rain and song. I finished my coffee and wrapped my hands around the warm cup, feeling its heat soak into my palms. The scent lingered, chicory, smoke, and rain. And for a moment, I thought, this is what peace feels like. A soft yawn escaped me, unbidden, the kind that comes not from tiredness, but from deep contentment. I leaned back in my chair, letting the quiet settle deeper. The world outside was blurred now. The rain, the river, the glow of lamps. Everything seemed to melt into one vast, sleepy hush. And there, in that tiny cafe on a rainy night in New Orleans, I realized I wasn't just listening to music. I was part of it. A single note in the long, dreamy song the city had been playing for centuries. When I finally stepped out of the cafe, the rain had eased into a fine drizzle. The streetlights shimmered against the wet cobblestones, turning every puddle into a tiny mirror. The air was thick and cool, filled with the scent of rain-soaked wood and jasmine drifting from some hidden courtyard. I pulled my coat tighter and began to walk toward the river. Each footstep made a soft splash, slow and rhythmic, like the ticking of a sleepy clock. Somewhere in the distance, a steamboat horn echoed, low, haunting, fading into the night like a sigh. The quarter was nearly empty now. Shutters were closed, candles extinguished behind lace curtains. Only the faint glow of gas lamps and the soft rustle of palm leaves broke the silence. It felt as though the city had exhaled, all its stories told, all its songs sung. As I reached the levee, the Mississippi opened before me like a dark ribbon of glass. The rain had stopped entirely now, leaving the air still and shimmering with mist. Across the water, the far shore glowed faintly, a blur of lights reflecting in long, trembling lines. I stood there for a long while, listening. The sound of the river was unlike anything else. It wasn't loud, but deep, a patient murmur, constant and ancient. It spoke of movement, of journeys, of all the people it had carried, and all the secrets it had kept. I could feel its presence beneath my feet, powerful and calm. Somehow, the river seemed to hold the entire city in its flow, its rhythm matching the quiet pulse of the streets behind me. A soft breeze drifted up from the water, cool against my face. It carried with it the faint scent of salt, magnolia, and something sweet, maybe sugar from the old docks downriver. Somewhere nearby, a man's voice hummed a slow tune, deep and lazy, like a lullaby. I couldn't see him, but the sound floated gently through the mist, merging with the river's hum. It reminded me of the saxophonist in the cafe, and how he'd said the city wasn't a place, but a feeling. I finally understood what he meant. New Orleans was the river, wide, alive, and endlessly patient. It didn't rush. It didn't demand. It simply moved, steady, eternal, carrying dreams and memories alike. The clouds above began to thin, revealing a sliver of pale moonlight. The surface of the Mississippi turned silver in places, rippling like silk. I watched the reflection of the moon dance across the current, splitting and reforming, as if the night itself were breathing. I sat on the low stone wall by the water's edge, feeling its cool dampness through my coat. My hands rested in my lap, still warm from the coffee I'd held earlier. It struck me how time had slipped away, unnoticed. Was it midnight now? Or closer to dawn? It didn't seem to matter. Here beside the river, the hours had no meaning. A soft drizzle began again, just a whisper at first, then a steady patter on my shoulders and the stones below. But it wasn't cold. The rain felt kind, the sort that touches rather than soaks, and refreshes rather than chills. I tilted my face upward and let it fall against my skin. Tiny drops beaded in my hair, on my eyelashes. Each one caught the lamplight and disappeared, leaving only the sensation of coolness and calm. The world had grown very quiet. Even the hum of the city seemed distant now, softened by rain and river. And there, in that soft, endless moment, I felt something that was neither thought nor memory, just peace. A deep, still peace, the kind that doesn't need to be understood to be felt. It was as though the night had folded itself gently around me, a blanket of mist, music, and water. I thought of the countless souls who had stood on this very spot, travelers, dreamers, musicians, lovers, all listening to the same river, all held by the same quiet magic. Their footsteps might be gone, their voices silent, but their presence lingered here, woven into the hum of the night. I closed my eyes and listened. The rain grew softer still, a faint whisper against my coat. The river sighed. Somewhere, a distant bell chimed once, echoing across the mist. The sound faded slowly, like a lullaby reaching its final note. And I knew that soon the night would turn to dawn. But for now, the world rested, suspended between darkness and light, sound and silence. The perfect place for dreams to begin. The first light of morning came quietly, so quietly that at first I didn't notice. It began as a softening of shadows, a faint glow behind the mist that hovered over the Mississippi. The river, which had been a deep shade of silver and gray through the night, now shimmered faintly with strokes of pale gold. I was still sitting by the water's edge, half lost in dreams, half aware of the gentle pulse of the world waking up around me. Somewhere behind me, a bird called, a single note, curious and calm. Another answered, and soon a few more joined in, their voices light and scattered like the first brushstrokes of dawn. The mist began to lift, curling and drifting like silk threads, revealing the quiet outlines of the city. The domed rooftops and spires at the French Quarter emerged from shadow, their bricks warm and red beneath the early light. The air carried a new scent now, fresh rain mixing with coffee and something sweet baking in a nearby cafe. It was the scent of beginning. I took a slow breath, feeling the cool morning air fill my lungs, and exhaled with a long sigh. The night had passed, and yet it felt like it hadn't ended at all, just shifted into another kind of coral. The sky above was still brushed with deep blue, but near the horizon it bloomed into rose and amber. The Mississippi reflected it all, turning from silver to gold to a soft, endless glow. Across the water, I could see a tugboat beginning its day, moving slowly through the mist, its engine humming softly, a low, steady sound like the heartbeat of the city itself. As I watched, the sun finally rose, not in a rush, but with a gentle certainty, as though the world were waking from a dream. And maybe, I thought, it was. I stood, brushing light raindrops from my coat. The stones beneath my feet were damp and glistening. My reflection wavered faintly in a small puddle, blurred like memory. I began to walk back through the narrow streets, each step slow and quiet. The lamps were still burning, but their glow was pale now against the dawn. Curtains stirred in windows. Somewhere, someone was humming softly as they swept their doorstep. The rhythm of the city was changing again, from night's hush to morning's heartbeat. I passed by the cafe where I'd stopped earlier. The same soft light glowed inside. The door was open, and the smell of fresh bread drifted out. Inside, the saxophone lay resting on a table, glinting faintly in the morning light. It felt as though the music from the night before still lingered in the air, invisible, but present like the last note of a lullaby, still echoing after it's been played. I smiled to myself, feeling that familiar mix of nostalgia and peace, the kind that comes at the end of a long, gentle journey. New Orleans wasn't loud now. It wasn't alive in the way people often describe it. It was resting, breathing softly, like a child just before waking. and I realized that I didn't need to chase the city anymore. It had already shared its secret, that beauty doesn't need to shout, and peace doesn't need to be found. Sometimes it's already waiting, quietly, beneath the sound of the rain, the hum of the river, and the sigh of a saxophone fading into morning. I stopped once more by the river, now glowing gold beneath the rising sun. The water moved gently, as though whispering goodbye. I whispered back, "Thank you," though I wasn't sure to whom. The river, the city, or the night itself. And as I stood there, feeling the warmth of the sun touch my face, I knew I'd carry this calm with me wherever I went. For some journeys never truly end. They just drift with you, like a melody that never fades, or a dream that lingers even after you wake. On Row, for voiceover. If you're still awake, thank you for joining me on this quiet night in New Orleans. I hope this journey brought you peace and a sense of stillness to carry into your dreams. If your eyes are growing heavy, just let them close. Breathe softly. Feel the calm of the river, the hum of the city, the warmth of morning light. You're safe here. You can rest now. And if you're still awake, thank you for traveling with me tonight. Don't forget to subscribe to Sleepy Travel Tales for more nightly journeys around the world. Tell me in the comments, where would you like to dream next? Maybe a quiet walk through Kyoto's gardens, or a slow train beneath the northern lights. Wherever you choose, I'll meet you there. Good night.